another journey, and today's journey is a guest who has said, my cousin gave me Let's Zeppelin fifth for my, I think that's fifth, I forgot, for my 12th birthday, and it literally changed my life forever. The receipt of that record was the impetus behind a career in music, eventually leading our guest to become a published entertainment journalist and radio personality. Just like me, because as many people know from my journey, I was a radio presenter stroke broadcast assistant for a radio station based in Cornwall, England. But I say no more. It's Danny's journey to so we welcome Danny Coleman to the journey.
Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm good. And it's good to talk to someone about something I know I'm passionate about all my podcasts, don't get me wrong, but to talk about radio and obviously your life is as a journey as a radio host or whatever we can talk about, it's just good to talk about. But I want to start simply. Your earliest memories talking about your cousin giving you Led Zeppelin for your 12th birthday. Let's start there.
Well, I had begun. Well, let me back up. First off, thank you for having me as a guest here on your podcast, David. I greatly appreciate it.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Uh, Growing up, there was always music in my household. Neither of my parents were musicians, uh, but they, except for a brief time in his childhood when my father was forced to take accordion lessons. But uh, nobody in my family, in my household, was a musician, but there was always music. My mom always listened to Elvis Presley or Creedence Clearwater or Tammy Wynette. My dad listened to the Platters and various other uh, Charlie Rich country artists of that nature. So I always grew up around music. When I was 11, I went to another family member's wedding reception as an 11-year-old kid, and I was just fascinated with the band, fascinated with the drummer. And at the end of the evening, he gave me his sticks, and I took them home, and I began beating on my mother's Tupperware, storage containers. And then my grandfather found a pair of bongos somewhere, and he gave them to me, and I began playing on them. So around the time I was 11 and a half, my grandmother offered to pay for drum lessons for me. And so I began taking drum lessons. So when I was 12, my cousin, who sadly is no longer with us, she passed away unexpectedly a few years ago. She was 4 years older than me. So I was 12, my 12th birthday, she would have been 16. She gave me this beautiful square wrapped in the Sunday comics, and I opened it up, and there was this guy with a bundle of sticks on his back. And I just remember thinking to myself, what the heck? What is this? And she said, "You're playing drums now. You need to listen to this guy." And I put on what was Led Zeppelin IV, and
That's the number.
it literally changed my life forever.
Mm.
And I just heard those drums in Black Dog and then Rock and Roll and where he comes in Stairway to Heaven. But the one that sold me was the way he did the drum intro. John Bonham did the drum intro to When the Levee Breaks. No more was I listening to AM radio. I started to search for album oriented rock on FM radio. I wanted more Led Zeppelin. I've had lead poisoning now since I was 12. And then from there I found the Rolling Stones, the Doors, Rush. I just began to gobble up anything that had these great drummers or a bluesy sound to it. And I got into my first band at the age of 13, and I'm still friendly with all the members of that band today. And from there, I just began. Everything was music. I just became obsessed with anything music,
Yeah.
and I just loved playing the drums. And I had designs once I got out of high school of being a working musician, which got sidetracked. But that's how that's I believe they call that life getting in the way, or at least that's what I call it. And so I figured, well, if I can't do the touring musician thing, I like radio also, because I heard myself on the radio for the first time when I was 16, and just I was paralyzed from head to toe. Wow, that's me, you know. And so I went to broadcast. I graduated high school, took a year off, went to broadcasting school, came out, started looking for jobs in radio, but none of them could pay the amount of money I was making at a full time job at the moment. Neither were there benefits, medical benefits, and the hours were all from somewhere like midnight till 4 in the morning.
The graveyard shift.
Right. So I'm like, forget that. I can't play my music. I can't play in bands if I'm doing that. So I kind of put it to the side. And then a series of more things where life gets in the way. I became married, kind of stepped out of music for about 10 years, which made everybody happy but me. And then a horrible divorce led to a lot of financial struggles, and then a career ending back injury where I was forced to reinvent myself. And I'm like, okay, let's go back to radio. So I saw an ad where they were looking for radio personalities or ideas, and I answered it. It was an AM radio station here in New Jersey. I pitched the idea of um, rock on radio. Program director loved it. And on April 26th, 2009, my first radio program, Rock on Radio, was born. And since then, that led to me picking up more gigs. That led to me becoming an entertainment journalist for a local newspaper here. And then from that led to me getting a blues music show on a couple of different local FM stations, and another monthly show. And it's just been everything's been kind of interconnected, and I've been doing that as the dominoes begin to fall. I've been doing that since April of 2009.
Yeah, and that journey's just amazing because radio people think it's an easy way of doing something, and I know it's not. I've done it, like I said, I've done it for 10 years. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing it from 2010 to, yeah, just before 2010, but it's classed at 10 years because I was on and off. But the fact was, it's not always about going on there straight away. The fact is, you got to do training, you got to do certain things to make yourself, in a sense, plausible for the program director, station manager to say, you're good. It's not about, unless you come in with good talent and you're ready to go on there, then yeah, so be it. But there's so many rules and so many things you got to do, as you know for yourself. You got to do so many things. Like, I know before I went on there, I did travel reading. Just saying the local travel is on the roads. That was all it was.
Yeah.
Yes, I contributed now and again, and I'm thankful for the station manager at the time. I contributed to his show when he had a show. I said, text messages say this, you know, Facebook says this because that's what it is in today's society. It is about reading text messages or reading messages on Facebook. And that's what it was. It was just me reading a screen, me reading travel. And then the opportunity came up for me. You're good to go on there. You can cover. You sure you're okay for covering? I said, yeah, I don't mind covering. And I remember it was late January 2011, I think it was, 10. I think it was the early part of, you know, that year. And it's like, I'm going to be away. Can you cover? I don't mind you covering. And I said, sure. This was told to me on a Monday, and I had like 4 days to prepare. And like, sure. What do you want me to do? He just said, well, you've heard my show. I said, yeah, I've heard your show. I remember the presenter well. And I was still nervous throughout those 3 days looking up things. And I said to the stage manager, I said, he wants me to cover for his show. How do you want me to take it? Do you want me to take it like his show does? He said, it's your show. You do it your way.
Yeah.
And I did do it my way. Yes, I kept certain, and I will quote, I used certain elements that was within the context of the show I was covering for, but I added a few things to that show to make it my show, and I felt successful with it. Now, I did the pre-recorded news, and I said this to you before, and I did the pre-recorded that news that day as well. And I just remember I messed up on the news by saying in the weather, intimate showers instead of intermittent showers. And I was nervous on there. And I was trying to think, I'm pushing up the sliders, I'm pushing up their slide, you know. But I felt part of something.
You know,
And
isn't that funny though?
yeah,
How you're the only one in the studio, you're by yourself. It's kind of weird because you're talking to nobody,
yeah. Except for
and
the wall in front of you. Or
except and yet we as personalities, when we first start, get nervous.
yeah,
It's like when people call the radio show, they're nervous.
mm,
Don't be nervous. I have guests come in who actually sit down in studio with me and will say, I'm so nervous. Don't be nervous. Nobody's watching you.
exactly.
So
Unless
go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you,
no,
but I found that.
it is that true saying, and you know, just from that day forward, yes, I didn't have a fixed show. I did covering for people, and even I covered a classical show once, but it was a morning show still, which featured the normal tracks. But for a half an hour of a day, that presenter I covered for that day generally devoted time to classical music because there was no classical genre set time for the radio. And I covered for her and I played, I don't know if you heard, probably have Vangelis. Now, he's a contemporary classical composer who's written music for film, but she came in the following week and said, that's not classical. I heard you played that. And I was like, it's classical to me. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't disrespect her in any way because she worked on a national, classical radio station in UK. But the fact was, she came in like, I heard you played that. It's like, yeah, it's classical. And she said, it's not really classical. And then it's just those segues that made me stronger. Yes, I believed in what I believed was right, and I still believe Vangelis is classical, even if it's not classical as in Vivaldi or Rachmaninoff. It's just modern classic, and it added my personality to what I believed in. Even though at the time we was migrating to go towards FM from being online, we had to be set guidelines of you can play this music, this, and now you have to play the guideline music. But it's just like I play what I want. It's personal choice. Yes, I played other classical tracks, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to play Vangelis that day.
A lot of my DJ or radio personality friends have retired when the stations, a lot of people don't realize whether it's satellite radio or terrestrial radio or internet radio, a lot of these stations use playlists.
Mm,
They purchase playlists from a playlist provider,
yeah.
and then the personality's job is just to babysit and make sure that the traffic and weather are read at the right time, make sure that the commercials come in at the right time. And because I did a 3 month stint at a station like that before the owner got arrested. and and I did a 3 month stint where I was the weekend guy. I was from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday, and that was my job. I sat at the board and just made sure that everything, and of course, I introduced the songs and so on and so forth. But there was I really didn't, I couldn't pick my own material.
Mm,
And a lot of my personality friends from a large market that I'm Philadelphia that have retired all said, you know, we have no freedom in radio anymore. We have to
yeah.
play what they tell us to.
Yeah.
There was a time I called a friend of mine. I was on my way to my daughter's college, and big at a very large Philadelphia radio station. And I said to her, "Hey, give me some Zeppelin, will you? I'm on my way to help my daughter move into college." It was her senior year in college. And her response to me was, "Danny, I can't. You got to wait about 40 minutes. That's when it comes up in the playlist, and I'm not allowed to alter the playlist."
Mm, exactly.
That you have no freedom as a radio personality to do on your on these major,
Yeah.
communications companies,
Yeah.
to do anything that you want to do. You can't. One of them told me his father used to go, or his cousin used to go over to the UK every summer, and every summer he would bring back all these different albums. Check out this band, and he would play them on air. Not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And
And
he would, help break certain bands wide open.
mm,
So it's definitely a different world.
and it is
Okay?
that way. Like you said, you go to national stations, you go to corporate stations, and like I said, I'm trying to not name drop for legal reasons because I don't want to be accountable for why they do it, and I understand why they do it. But from the perspective of me being on this radio station I was involved in, and I'm always passionate about it, and they know I support them no matter what. Yes, freeform was the thing when it was internet. Freeform per se was okay when it first went to FM, but then at the same time they wanted a structure. So the structure was a mainstream show between, I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, right through to 6. You had to follow that playlist, which was automatically randomly generated. Now you could tweak it, like adjust it. So if you saw a certain song, like you said, Led Zeppelin, and you wanted it to go higher, you could move it. Or if you want to change it, you can change it for like-minded song, as long as it was in the context of that, genre. But at the same time, the flexibility, the only time you had flexibility is if you was promoting stuff in on a non-commissional basis. Like if you said, I've got local artists, but then it fell into the specialty. So you had to wait till after 6 o'clock when it became known as the specialty zone. And 6 o'clock right through till the last show, live show, I think at the time was 10 o'clock. Weekdays, and then weekends was all day weekends, and you had to adjust accordingly. Now,
That's how it was at that station I was on for those several months too.
like,
Everything you just said.
yeah, like so. God bless her. This person I worked with as a producer as well as being her friend, and she was the oldest person on the radio station, and she was a mature age, let's just say, very mature. And she had a show. When I first met her, she had a show Fridays, 2 to 4 o'clock. It was a free-form show. She could play what she wanted. When the radio station said we want a set format for they got play this, she was like, I want to play my own songs. they charted it because we had to play charted hits in the daytime. It's charted hits, and they were like, no, we think it'd be best if you move to a Sunday, which was obviously specialty show. And she said, I don't feel comfortable. I'm so used to doing, and I'll lose my listenership because people are so used to me being on a Friday, and they were like, sorry, it's that or nothing at all. And I heard, knew this was going on, and me being a friend and knowing her so long, I said, I'll come in on a Sunday. I don't mind being your producer. And she said, you do that? I said, yeah. If you feel like you want someone to be there for you on a Sunday because obviously she wasn't technical savvy as most people, you be there. And I said, yeah, I'll be there. And I was there. I was there till the day I left to immigrate to America. I was there being the part of feature that she had every weekend to say, I've got a cat and dog wanting to be rehomed. We're going to meet them now. And I was the voice of that cat or dog. So, for example, my name is Bruno, I'm a Labrador, and I can talk like this. Or it was Felix the cat. Hey, I'm Felix the cat, as you can hear. So I had to adapt my voice for every single cat or dog, and she usually had a cat and a dog, so I had to think of two different voices every week just to accommodate the fact of that feature. And she's no longer with us, but the fact was, she wasn't going to carry on because she felt like she was pushed away from what she was used to.
or what worked for her and
What?
her listeners.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't condone the management of that radio station. I have to totally respect that they have to follow what they want. But at the same time, to make her feel comfortable, she had to move to the side to the Sunday. And like I said, I was there for her. And she
Right.
was grateful for.
Yeah, good for you, man. That's great. That's very cool.
So I spent 2 hours every Sunday, and the public transportation where I come from in England on a Sunday is like every hour. So I had to quick leave early to get to where she would pick me up to take me to the radio station. It's like, but it worked, and that's what I believe, and you will wholeheartedly will say is true. That's what community is about. That's what being there for each other is about. And
Right.
that's what makes radio, even though people don't see what happens behind the scenes unless you get a rogue radio presenter saying, oh, this happened today, and they end up getting bogged down. But it's that sort of feeling of just being there for each other.
I think we talked about it before we began this podcast. Back in the day, so to speak, when I was a kid, there was a disc jockey, and they were disc jockeys back
Yeah,
then because
not
they
radio
spun
personality.
right records and 8-track cartridges, which is how I learned in
And
broadcasting school.
I've seen both
And
of those.
right, and, and I woke up with a disc jockey by the name of Jim O'Brien on a station called WFIL out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, AM station. I had my alarm clock set to WFIL, and every day that's how I was woke up for school.
Mm.
And but back then it was what was called the boss jock format. They were all, hey, listen, they were all hyper, like hands, like I could just see them in the studio.
Similar
And
to what they call shock jocks nowadays.
well, yes and no. To me, a shock jock is more like Howard Stern,
Mm.
where you say absurd things for a reaction.
Yeah,
These guys were more of the they would be known as, if in today's lingo, maybe as a hype man.
yeah, I've heard of
Yeah,
that.
they're the ones that got you all riled up. Hey, let's go for another beautiful day here in Philadelphia. Yeah, that's how they all talked, as opposed to some of the other stations where they all talked like this,
Yeah.
golden-throated radio announcer. So when I woke up with that, and the DJ though made you feel like they were talking to you as an individual. even though the listenership was in the tens of thousands or 100,000, whatever it was in that area, there was a way, which I think is here in the United States. Back in the 1960s, we had a newscaster by the name of Walter Cronkite or Cronkite. I'm sorry, Cronkite. Walter Cronkite. He was named the most trusted man in America because when he reported the news, back when outlets reported the news, he did so in a way that made you want to believe him.
Mm.
It made you feel like he was talking directly to you. And that's the way a lot of radio personalities were. And if you look, I'm not sure what it's like where you're at, but I'm right in between two major markets here. I'm in between Philadelphia and New York. So I get stations from both, even terrestrial
Mm.
wise. And by taking away the amount of time that a personality can speak on air in favor of a playlist, you lose that human connection. The only ones who still give you that connection are the ones who've been doing it for 20, 25, 30 years or more because they've adapted. But the newer personalities or the ones who were thrown into situations kind of like you were saying where they want you to fill in, they haven't learned that craft of being uh, personable enough, I guess. Like I listen to them and I'm like, okay, just get to the song. Not like in the old day where a DJ or a personality would tell a story or a joke or they would do some skit like you were referring to with the woman that you were talking about, that you became, oh, I hope they do that again. No, radio was, even if it wasn't free form radio and they still had to play X amount of music, it was structured in a way where the personalities had more freedom,
Mm.
which my radio program, Rock on Radio, that I've been doing for 16 years, it started out on AM radio.
Mm.
So I had some structure.
Yeah.
However, I moved it to internet about 13 years ago, strictly internet radio. And I have affiliates over in the UK, four of them actually. And I've got 7 or 8 here in the United States that will re-air my program at various times on various days. When I went internet radio, I thought for sure I was getting ahead of the curve, but that also allowed me to go more freeform.
Mm.
I expanded the show to 2 hours, like people were asking me for. I could get my own sponsors. I didn't have to break at quarter past or the half of an hour
Mm.
to do traffic and weather. Uh, so the internet radio is so much more freeing. But then I fought the other thing too, David. Oh, well, what station is it on? Oh, it's on, such and such.com. Oh, so it's not real radio. I can't listen to it in my car. Well, do you have Bluetooth? Well, yeah. Well, then log into the website. You can listen to it in your car. No, that's not real radio. Yet every single radio station in the world, whether it's terrestrial, satellite, you can listen to it online.
Yeah. Or
So
even through an app.
exactly. So it's like, okay, yeah, but it was a battle. But I've climbed back to where I think things have leveled out.
Yeah, and you say about that, it's just the personality shines through being a certain way. Like certain guidelines, like you said, can't be a certain way. But there's one radio presenter I listen to, and I've listened to for a while. Now, I'm not saying he's controversial, he's had his moments, but for the first segment of his show, he dedicates, like, I think it used to be when he was on the national radio station. He spent half an hour talking. No music, just talking about anything. Then he followed the guidelines like I talk, and when there's music, talk, when there's music, or there's talk, music, music. go outside if because he smoked, go outside, have a cigarette, come back in, that sort of thing. But that was his personality. People got used to it. Yes, there is still opinion about how he is as presenter, but he moved from the radio station he was to where he is now, and he still follows that format of the first half an hour. I'm talking this, but he has more commercials now, so he has to be mindful of commercials. He has to be mindful of the news has to be on time now, because before he used to talk so much
Right.
he forgot the timing at the top of the hour, or because the original radio station he was on was like half past the hour, so he kept like, but it was obviously half hour when he was on there, but he kept forgetting the times, like, oh, it's like 8 minutes past the hour. It's like, 8 minutes past the hour? I think one time I heard it, and it's like, it's now 12 minutes past the hour. Now it's the news. That's not the news. But he was a law to himself, and
Right.
he was happy with his format.
Well, that's how uh, rock on radio is for me. It's a 2 hour sit down interview talk show. Now I have a producer.
Mm,
Her name is Claire, who also is my engineer. I had an engineer, but unfortunately he passed away. His name was Art, and since he passed away in October of 23, Claire has been doing double duty, engineering and producing. So her and I, the first 10, 15 minutes of the show is just banter between us. I introduce the sponsors. We talk about them. We talk about events that we have coming up for the radio station, give websites, Facebook, social media, all that stuff. And then I get to my guest who was there for 2 hours. And then we just have a conversation. And they can either play music live in studio, acoustically,
mm,
because I'm a drummer. And as much as I would love, and the room I broadcast from, the 2-track studio of Deco Entertainment, they're a record distribution label. They're an arm of Warner Brothers
yeah,
Records.
I've heard of Decker.
If you look at the studio is just incredible. It's a rehearsal space,
Mm,
and it's I could easily put a full band in there, but that would require a lot of miking, a much bigger recording and mixing board, and it would just require so much. So, but by playing acoustically right there at my table, it really gives my listeners a chance to hear these bands in their rawest, most raw format.
yeah,
Their acoustic guitars or drummers will bring in a cajon or bongos or some hand percussion, and but it's them. And they talk about themselves and they talk about their lives and they talk about their music and how it came to be and how the band came to be. And I give them the opportunity to tell people things that they can't in more depth than they can't say from a stage microphone. And I'll play MP3s or anything they bring in. They can, like I said, they play live, they play MP3s, a mixture of both, and it gives them that opportunity to get their music out there.
yeah,
And I designed it that way for two reasons. Number one, because of that 16-year-old kid who heard himself on the radio for the first time. And number two, because you'd be surprised how much people will tell you if you let them.
yeah.
If you let them speak to you, you'll find out. And then I never script or rehearse anything. I just go with the flow.
I'm like that with the podcast. I just read a bit about you. I haven't got anything else in front of me. I haven't got any side pages loaded up. I haven't got my phone in front of me. I'm just taking you as you.
And that's how I do it as well. So we have that commonality, which is a great. It's very freeing.
Mm,
And and I get people. I get local musicians. I get rock and roll Hall of Fame acts. I get names of people I only dreamed of seeing in concert when I was a kid. They now call my radio program to talk. And I always make sure we put them in. And then through Deco, I get all these other cool musicians. And so it's really It's really a very neat thing. But
Mm,
so being an internet radio station, I couldn't do that with my terrestrial station show, my blues show.
mm,
I could plop in a couple of interviews, 20-second, 30-second snippets,
yeah.
but I only have an hour and it's a music show. So I can't do all that. So there are constrictions to being on terrestrial radio.
Mm,
Even though the station I broadcast from is an NPR affiliate, National Public Radio affiliate, there are still restrictions because it's monitored by the FCC.
mm. Or Ofcom if you're in England, yeah. So,
Right. So, yes. So there's such advantages to going kind of off the grid by going on the grid.
yeah.
so
So,
it's,
so you're talking about obviously being able to talk, and I will talk about this in a brief way because obviously we're looking at time. But Fox Pops, as they call them, because that's what the snippets are known as in the radio term, do you feel like you can get the message across in that 20 seconds, or do you feel like you should have the more in depth? Because Fox Pops, in my opinion, if you get the wrong one, it won't sound right. If you get the right one, you get people talking, talking, talking. And that's what I discovered myself over the years when I've done Fox Pops. It's like you try and get some people, you might say, I don't want to talk to you, which you respect, but then you do get someone and you get someone talking passionately. It's like, I did say only 20 seconds, but how can you get the whole message across in 20 seconds if they talking so passionately?
well, what I do with my blues music show, again, I'm very blessed, David, that I'm allowed to interview through the site that I write for, NewJerseyStage.com.
Mm,
I get to interview, as I said, people I only dreamed of seeing in concert. And because I have a blues music show, I have a relationship with record labels like uh, Alligator Records and Blind Pig and uh, Quarto Valley. And I have relationships with the PR people of a lot of these
mm,
artists. So when they have an artist that's going to be somewhere between the state of Delaware and Connecticut on the East Coast, they will reach out to me and say, "Hey, can we get coverage for this?" They will call me and I record all of my interviews to Adobe Audition, which I have on this very laptop that we are talking to each other on.
mm,
Then I go back, let's say they're talking about a new album, and I have the new album. They talk about a particular song, I'll clip that snippet from the audition
yeah,
and use it as a lead in to that song.
which I've done myself several
Right.
times.
So yeah, it's all the magic of editing.
Yeah, and strangely enough, when I do upload my podcast, they are very rarely edited unless I have to really cut something out. But very rarely I do cut. If it is, it's usually down to technical issues. But and I make a joke in it saying like I acted a SpongeBob as a cutscene where he has a thing like a few minutes later. I've now put that in to just make it. But
I
I'm
love
not.
SpongeBob.
I'm not infringing on copyright when I say that, but you have to make it somewhat entertainment. So I don't cut it completely. I just cut it so it's enough to say a few minutes later, and then it goes straight back in. But it just makes it funnier for that. Now,
Exactly.
now when I do the top and tail of this, it will have the header, it will have the end. I'm promoting a book at the moment called Feline Warrior. So I got a person talking about their book Feline Warrior at the end of a podcast. Now I'm doing that for free because I want them to get the recognition for their book. And if anyone wants it, it's available now. That's me, promo
Right.
over. But it's Feline Warrior on Amazon.com by Amy Allison. And that's a good book if anyone likes reading books and reads poetry. But that's the only time I edit, is when I add those elements in.
Right.
And that's
Right.
what I believe. works.
I agree.
And
I never edit rock on radio, only at the beginning and the end
and
to make sure that the time fits,
yeah,
but that's it.
and piece it all together,
Yep.
it works. So to conclude the interview, and this is a really great interview because I could go on and on and on and on, but and it'd be a radio show of its own right mind. People often go on a journey. Now, if you like to go on the radio, it's about going on a self journey of awareness because you're following your music passion, you're following your vocal passion if you're passionate about talking. But how do you think it's going for the future? Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think it's going to stay as it is, where people will be going between online to, you know, traditional ways like on AM, FM, or do you think AM's on its way out? Because I know if you go to England now, most AM stations are gone now. It's now FM or it's a additional on a thing called DAB radio, which is digital radio, and you get the extra channels. But do you think broadcast as a whole is getting better, or is it going to stay as it is?
January 6th, 2020 was the very first show of Danny Coleman's Got the Blues. My very first blues music show, terrestrial radio and online. Halfway through the broadcast, halfway through my very first show, the station streaming goes down. I start getting text message after text message after text message. Hey, what happened to your show? Hey, I can't hear you. How come it's nothing but dead air? Blah, 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 blah. So I reach out to my program director, and she said the station lost the stream. We're working to get it back up. And that's what I told them. The station lost the stream. They're working to get it back up. Just listen to it on your radio.
Traditional.
Do you know what every single person responded? I don't have a radio. The only radio I have is in my car, and it's too cold to sit outside.
Hmm.
So they were listening to the program on cell phones, tablets,
Computer.
computers, anywhere but on terrestrial radio. And I thought to myself, wow, nobody even has. It's not like I said, go listen to it on 8-track.
Yeah.
Listen to it on cassette. No. Half the cars today don't even have CD players.
No.
So I really think that terrestrial radio is going to continue to limp along, only because it's like newspapers. I don't know about you in Virginia, but up here, we used to have this newspaper called the Trenton Times. And on Sunday, it was the Sunday Times Advertiser. And trust me, I was a paper boy, and I delivered to the Trenton Times. And on Sundays, I used to have to go to the local grocery store and get a shopping cart because the 50 or 60 customers I had on my paper route, or 75, whatever it was, the inserts and the advertisements were so big, and the paper itself was so big that I couldn't carry them in a bag or a satchel over my shoulder. I had to put them in a shopping cart and build them when I got from house to house to house.
Mm.
Now you go to buy a newspaper and it's literally razor thin.
Oh, it's on digital form.
It's all in digital form. I was a 20-year-old kid working for the Wall Street Journal. And I remember going to a big engineering conference, and they said, in 20 years, the newspaper may be gone altogether, and you're going to get all of your information from your computer. And that was 1983.
Mm.
So
42
here we
years
are.
ago.
Everybody looks at their phone. They look at there it is. There's your Wall Street Journal. There's your local newspaper. There's your tablet. There's your social media. The problem we have today, just like with radio, is we don't know where to go to get the best quality product.
Yeah.
Whether
And
that's news or radio or television. Now you have nothing but streaming. Cable television is on its way out. The world is ever evolving. I mean, think about it. If it didn't, we'd all still be. Somebody said to me one time, we'd all still be using horse and buggies
true.
to get from place to place.
True.
And it's always evolving. It's never going to be kind to music, I don't think, because I think people take music and or more so how they get it for granted. You get in your car, you turn on the radio, you expect to hear something. You don't care where it came from or how it got there or who's making it. You just know, oh, I like that song, or oh, I like that show.
Yeah.
That's why more and more people listen to podcasts now, because it's what they want.
Very true.
You can't program your own playlist for a terrestrial radio station or an internet radio station, but you can choose what podcast to listen to. So I think it's going to continue to evolve. I think terrestrial radio is hanging on for dear life, especially since advertisers are putting their dollars in other places. A few of my friends have been laid off or forced to retire because after 25 years, they were told, you got to do this or we got to let you go.
I get that.
So,
yeah. So the last question, if people want to listen to you or get hold of you, how can they get hold of you?
Well, they can go to my website is DannyColeman'sRockOnRadio.com. The quick link is DCROR.com.
Okay.
They can go there, or Instagram, Facebook is Danny Coleman's Rock On Radio 2. That's the number 2. And Instagram is at Rock On Radio, all one word, all capital letters.
Okay. And Danny, I'd like to say thank you for sharing your musical radio journey with me today. It's been a pleasure. Keep up the good work, because someone's got to keep up the good work for radio, as the saying goes.
Why not us?
Exactly. But thank you.
All right. David, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you having me.
A message from Amy. Amy, it's over to you.
Hello, I am Amy Harrison. I'm the author of the book Feline Warrior Part 1 and Part 2, a fictional story that is written in a poetic format that is based on real-life events that could happen to anyone and intended only for relatable purposes. This story claws into Catgirl's past abuse. Catgirl is human and part feline, but truly a warrior who can handle anything because she is strong and fierce. She has been taken advantage of for far too long. Join her on her journey as she reaches freedom. Here are some poems from Feline Warrior. Tears flow. I no longer know what to do. I am no longer who I once was, and it is because I made a choice to use my voice, and that is okay, because what I had to say was true, unlike me and you. Now I see. I am free. I am me. I am Catgirl. Ultimately, be you. Always stay true. Do what you want to do, because every day is made new. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later. The Journey Podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.